All right, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the body roll, I'm sick of the brake dive, I'm sick of the 4x4 ride height. In today's episode of Project Civic Si, I'll finally be lowering this car with a set of Tein S-Tech lowering springs. Let's get to it. Hey there, I suppose I ought to back up a little bit, huh? Because it was only a few episodes ago that you saw me installing these Coney shocks and getting the performance alignment done, and taking the car to the track and finding the handling overall be pretty enjoyable. And that is true. I think if it's strictly a daily driver or a fun car, these Coney shocks with the stock springs do an admirable job. However, as I go to add more tire grip to this car, these stock springs are simply too soft for the job at hand. The car has so much body roll and so much brake dive and so much lean. And while having a car that's soft isn't necessarily a problem, the biggest thing was just I hated all the weight transfer. You had to wait and wait and wait and wait, and then the car would finally turn. And that's just time wasted on the racetrack. So stiffer springs are definitely on the agenda. Unfortunately, these Coney shocks have no sort of headroom to give me that option. Now, I need to back up because you'll be wondering, well, how'd you pick those Tein S-Tech springs? Well, it's actually a funny story. They were free. Actually, they were less than free. A little while ago, on a local Honda Facebook group page, someone was parting out their Civic Si, and they were selling their entire suspension for their car. So that was Tein springs, True Heart shocks, and rear camber arms for $200 for all of it. Now, the sticking point is this guy was in the high desert out in the middle of nowhere, so it was quite a drive. However, I was able to leave from work that same night, make the drive all the way out there and come back. And turns out everything was in great shape. So the $40 or so I spent in gas meant I had about $240 all into the suspension system. Now from there, since I knew I was going to be installing Coneys in this car, I sold the True Heart shocks, and at that point I'd already bought the SPC camber arms, so I sold the ones that came with that car as well. And in the end, I ended up making about $270 off those parts I sold. So all in, I actually was given about $30 to install these Tein springs in the car. So kind of a no-brainer. It's a fun story. In a previous episode, I mentioned that I'm quite thrifty when it comes to buying parts for the car, and I guess that's just more proof of that. So you may be wondering what has changed that I would go and change course with my suspension tuning, because there's only a few episodes ago that I did all this, put the Coney shocks in the car, I paid for performance alignment, did all that fun stuff, and I think it proved what I wanted to prove, which is that shocks alone, especially good shocks like these Coneys, good performance shocks I should say, do improve the handling of the car, so I'm pretty satisfied with that. However, it also didn't fix all the body roll issues. And so you're wondering, well, why are you doing it right this second? And the answer is quite simple. The answer is actually twofold. One, my front left suspension started creaking occasionally. I'm going over bumps, so I think one of the strut tops is dead and needs to be replaced. My fault, I reused them after 110,000 miles in the new shocks. They're probably dead in the first place. Second, as we saw the last episode, I ended up breaking an axle at Button Willow. More accurately, the used crummy axle I bought to replace the one that I broke before, long story, ended up letting go on the track, leaked all the axle grease out and the axle shit the bed. So I had to pay a lot of money to Honda, buy a brand new one from the dealership, so I had the new axle in the car, and I figured I'm taking the whole front suspension apart to replace that axle. I'm going to mess the alignment up most likely to get it realigned. I may as well make it worth my while and add some performance to the suspension with these Tein lowering springs. So if it seems like I'm skipping around, I do apologize, but these lowering springs are pretty straightforward to install. If you want a more in-depth how-to, I'd advise you check out my Coney shock video a few episodes ago. That was very in-depth, very thorough, how to take the suspension apart in these cars and how to do everything. Notice the left front shock was making squeaking noises over bumps. Thought it was the strut top. The strut top looks okay. Sure enough, I pulled the shock apart, and the shock has no rebound at all. I'm not sure if it's dead or what, but I see some grease here on the strut, and I compressed it down, and just nothing has happened. So like, I'll pry and press down further. Okay. It has a little bit of rebound, and then it stops right about there. All right, new strut tops straight from Moog. Very nice, look just like the stock ones. So I'm hoping the rear springs are easy. They probably won't be, but hey, here's hoping. Pro tip, everyone says all you need to do is remove the shock bolt, remove the sway bar. They are wrong. Loosen the trailing arm bolts. It makes it much easier to push down the trailing arm and get this spring out with one person. Life update. According to the internet, all you need to do to install springs in the back of this car is to remove the sway bar and loosen the shock bolt. They are definitely wrong. At least if you're doing this by yourself. I had to unbolt the trailing arm and unbolt the upper rear arm, camber link for me. That's the only way I was able to get enough droop in this whole trailing arm to get the new spring back in this car. That sucked. I'm back at the junkyard again. While trying to install the rear lowering springs on the Civic. Putting everything back together, I accidentally stripped out this bolt that goes to the upper link. And of course, Honda wants a ton of money for this bolt, this little bracket. So hopefully this one's in good shape. So this is like a 2003 to 2007-ish Honda Accord. Just happened to spot it walking through the yard. It's on Nissan wheels, kind of weird. But if you look, someone clearly spent a lot of time and money making this thing two-tone, lime green and white. So like the leather interior, the fake leather I should say, all lime green. The hood, lime green. The valve cover, lime green. The core support for some reason is lime green. Some cars are better off left in the yard. So this is actually a really cool find in the yard. Being in Southern California, sometimes a lot of experimental prototype vehicles tend to pop up in odd places, and this is one of those things. This is an experimental prototype vehicle, 2009 Other. I've never even seen this before, but it's an electric vehicle that they've since scrapped. But I've never even seen this sort of vehicle before. Like, I don't know what the tub is based on. The doors look kind of like a Volvo maybe, but it's crazy. You see composite front tub, front crash structure, wild little racing brakes, like a true coilover rear suspension. This fucking crazy looking little car. Here we go, new rubber. Nexen Sur 4G 225 45 17. Supposedly these are some of the stickiest 200 tread wear street tires out there right now, so let's see how it goes. Put them on the car, get a new alignment done with the new springs, the new axle, and then hopefully this piece of junk runs. Fitment in the car looks super good, very aggressive. I'm rubbing right now. I think it's on the fender liners since they hang low. I need to sort that out. The back's like totally flush with the 225s in the back. Look at that. Totally flush. It's rubbing very lightly. I think it's okay though, but just need to figure out these front fender liners. But otherwise, stance-wise, the car's good to go. Lowering the car, Helped out with the camber, was able to get 3.25 up front versus 2.75 before stock ride height. So picked up 1/2 degree camber in the front and the back. It was at 2.25 before, but plenty of adjustability. I dropped it down to 2.5 degrees of camber in the back, just for even better tire wear. 0 toe all around. Interestingly, the car is 8 degrees of caster up front, which is great for a front wheel drive car. And that's it for this episode of Project Honda Civic Si. Here are some before and after pictures of the car showing how much lower it is after installing the Tein springs. It looks like the front of the car is about 2 inches lower and the rear of the car is about 1.5 inches lower. In the next episode, I'll be returning to the racetrack to see if these springs are all style and no substance, or if there are performance gains to be had with these Tein lowering springs. So, stay tuned.